In a quiet city of timber-framed buildings and cobblestone streets, life proceeds at a gentle pace. The grand facade of the Adventurer Guild stands as a central hub for the town's warriors and questers. An imposing man in full plate armor enters the guild hall, his presence immediately drawing the curious stares of two female adventurers who have never seen him before. He walks directly to the front desk, leans over the counter, and informs the nervous receptionist that he would like to take a quest. The receptionist apologetically explains that quests are only available to adventurers who are officially registered with the guild. Her expression shifts from professional courtesy to wide-eyed shock as she notices what the man is presenting. He holds out a gleaming Royal Swordsmanship Medal, a prestigious award granted only to those who have performed distinguished service in matters of national strategy. Stunned into silence, the receptionist covers her mouth as she realizes the man standing before her might be the former strongest hero, Dandelion Ossier. He confirms his identity with a simple statement, sending a ripple of shock through the nearby adventurers who overheard. The guild members murmur amongst themselves in disbelief, recognizing the name of the legendary hero who defeated the Demon King 2 decades ago. Now buzzing with excitement, the receptionist tells Hero Dan that he can choose any quest he likes as a special exception, and he promptly plucks a notice from the quest board. She gasps when she sees he has selected a quest to slay a wyvern, but Dandelion calmly remarks that after a 20-year gap, it seems like an appropriate challenge. Onlookers are in awe, impressed that the legendary hero would immediately take on such a high-rank quest, proclaiming how cool he is. As he stands ready, a trio of young female adventurers suddenly rushes toward him with purpose. They stop directly in front of him, and one eagerly asks if they can join his party for the quest. Their reasoning is simple and filled with admiration. They desperately want to see the famous hero fight with their own eyes. Dandelion seems surprised by the request for a party, and as one of the girls touches his weapon in awe, she whispers that it is the Holy Sword. He casually agrees to their proposal, stating that it is a hero's duty to lead the younger generation and that they can learn from watching him fight. The three girls let out a synchronized cheer, thrilled that their request was granted. The scene transitions to a stark and rocky mountain pass, the site of the wyvern's lair. The three girls now look utterly horrified and exhausted, their previous excitement completely gone. Dandelion is being violently thrown around, caught in the grip of an unseen force. A massive wyvern stands over his downed form as the girls watch in disbelief, wondering how the hero could possibly be so weak. Scrambling to his feet in a panic, Dandelion mutters that his holy armor should have protected him while one of the girls shouts at another to begin her analysis. He charges forward, brandishing his weapon and declaring that there is nothing his holy sword cannot cut. With a mighty leap, he swings his blade directly at the lunging wyvern. The sword bounces off the creature's hide with no effect, leaving Dandelion aghast and the wyvern momentarily confused. The girls erupt in fury, screaming that he is a liar and a swindler, complaining that his so-called holy sword is as effective as a squishy pillow. Dandelion turns to warn them that their own weapons will be useless against the beast. To his complete shock, their coordinated attacks strike the wyvern with explosive force, clearly wounding it. The battle continues across the desolate landscape, flashes of magic lighting up the rocks. Finally, the great wyvern collapses to the ground, defeated. The three girls stand over the beast, battered and breathing heavily from the fight, while Dandelion looks on, untouched and bewildered. He cheerfully announces their victory, proclaiming that it was a tough battle but they won. One of the exhausted girls turns to him with a deadpan expression, questioning his use of the word we. She bluntly informs the old man that he contributed absolutely nothing to the fight. Back in the city, word has already spread through the Adventurer Guild that Hero Dan is a liar. The trio of girls recounts their experience to another adventurer, clarifying that calling him a liar is being generous. In truth, he was nothing more than a burden. Dandelion overhears their scornful words, muttering to himself that there must be some mistake and that he should still be a capable fighter. His mind drifts back to his old companions, the powerful friends who fought by his side 20 years ago. He consoles himself with the thought that as long as he has friends he can rely on, everything will be fine. His attention is drawn to another adventurer, an elf named Amber, who is being swarmed by others hoping to form a party with him. Amber's gaze is cold and distant, seemingly unfazed by the attention. Dandelion approaches the guild receptionist and asks about the popular adventurer. She excitedly explains that Amber is an S-rank adventurer, the kingdom's greatest genius who holds a 100% quest success rate and is the fastest finisher in history. Dandelion scoffs at the claim, declaring that a 100% success rate is impossible and that Amber must be lying, as even he couldn't achieve that in his prime. Amber appears directly behind him and icily asks who exactly he is calling a liar. Dandelion stammers that he wasn't talking about him, but Amber cuts him off, stating he doesn't care what an old-fashioned hero thinks of him. Surprised, Dandelion asks if Amber knows who he is, a hopeful glint in his eye. Amber confirms he does, referencing the fresh rumor about the hero's pathetic and useless display against the wyvern. Dandelion sweats, trying to defend himself by saying that the world has changed a lot since his younger days. Amber coldly retorts that Dandelion himself is the one responsible for that change. A confused Dandelion points to himself and asks what Amber could possibly mean by that. Internally, Dandelion fumes that Amber is a snob, but he can't shake the thought that someone with a perfect success rate must be the real deal. Scheming that a partnership would solve his money problems, Dandelion clears his throat to propose they team up, but Amber immediately declines. The swift rejection leaves Dandelion utterly devastated. He desperately pleads with Amber, admitting his dire need for money, which prompts Amber to ask why the legendary hero is degrading himself to such a level. Prodded by the question, Dandelion begins to recount his story. He starts his tale 20 years ago, at the moment he defeated the Demon King. Following his victory, the king rewarded him with immense wealth and marriage to the princess. He settled into a peaceful life, believing his happy days of luxury would go on forever. Amber listens intently, then asks what happened to change things. Dandelion states with grim simplicity that he ran out of money. The blunt, pathetic reason leaves Amber completely speechless and horrified. Dandelion continues, explaining that the moment his fortune was gone, the princess demanded a divorce and threw him out, forcing him to return to the life of an adventurer. Amber calls the entire story pathetic, telling Dandelion it's his own fault for being so wasteful and that his fighting tactics are hopelessly old-fashioned. He places a small pouch of coins onto the table between them. Amber declares that he is donating the money to the poor, old-fashioned hero out of pity. As Amber walks away, Dandelion calls after him, still trying to form a party to make more money, but the receptionist informs him it's useless because Amber is a solo adventurer who has never partied with anyone. Amber sits back down, remarking on the sad state the legendary hero has fallen into. Dandelion dismisses the title, saying that legendary hero is just a name other people came up with on their own. His lament is interrupted by the approach of the three young women from the Wyvern quest. The adventurers explain that their next quest requires them to carry a lot of baggage and ask if he would be willing to help them. Recognizing them, he questions the job, and they offer him 10% of the quest's paid to be their porter, an offer he eagerly accepts, saying he'll do anything. At a campfire in the wilderness, Dandelion serves stew to the party, who declare it delicious and ask for more. While the girls hunt monsters, he is seen in the background, having successfully run away from a creature they dispatched. He waits patiently by a riverbank while the girls take a break to splash around and have fun. Carrying a massive pack of their supplies, Dandelion watches them and begins to understand their new way of adventuring. One of the girls prepares for an encounter, her expression focused and ready for battle. He observes their strategy as one girl uses analysis magic to identify the monster's weakness to fire binding from a safe range. Another then uses a gun as a medium to launch a magic attack, defeating the monsters without ever engaging in close combat, a much safer method of fighting. Dandelion grimly accepts the truth. Amber was right, and his own methods are completely out of date. Realizing he no longer has a place among modern adventurers, he walks through the city, deciding it is time to quit the guild and find another job. As he stands inside the guild hall, a young girl's desperate cry for help suddenly fills the room. She stands in the center of the hall, arms outstretched, pleading for assistance. Dandelion immediately approaches the crying girl and gently asks her what is wrong. She explains through tears that her village was attacked by monsters and begs for someone to help her people. Dandelion turns to the other adventurers in the guild, loudly asking them if they didn't hear the girl's plea. He confronts a group of them, demanding to know why they aren't helping her, but one simply points to the quest reward on the board. Another adventurer coldly remarks that they can't get much money for saving a poor, backwater village. Enraged, Dandelion yells at them, questioning their character and asking if they even consider themselves adventurers anymore. A man calmly replies that of course they are adventurers, but they are not charity workers and will not risk their lives for such a cheap reward. From a distance, Amber watches the confrontation with a thoughtful expression. Dandelion stares in disbelief at the room full of indifferent mercenaries. He seethes with anger, disgusted that for these modern adventurers, the act of helping people in need has been reduced to a mere business transaction. Turning his back on them, he puts a comforting hand on the young girl's shoulder and tells her not to worry. The hero, Dandelion Ossier, will help her. The girl looks up at him, her face streaked with tears of relief, asking if he really means it. He clenches his armored fist, acknowledging to himself that he is powerless now, but he cannot ignore a person who is asking for help right in front of him. He turns to the guild receptionist and loudly proclaims that he will accept this quest. The receptionist panics, explaining that due to the large number of monsters, it's a B-rank quest he is not eligible for as an E-ranked adventurer, and her boss was already mad about the last exception she made for him. Just then, Amber steps forward, takes the quest sheet from the board, and states that in that case, he will take it. He looks at the receptionist and instructs her to register Dandelion as a member of his party. The receptionist's jaw drops, stammering as she processes the implication that Amber and Dan are forming a party together. Amber confirms it is happening, looking over at the still confused Dandelion. The entire guild hall erupts into chaos and disbelief at the unprecedented news that Amber, the famous solo adventurer, is finally forming a party. Amber turns to leave, telling the hero to come on and stop spacing out, while Dandelion can only stare, trying to understand what is happening. The two walk toward the guild doors, a strange and unspoken alliance formed between them. Silence returns to the guild hall as the other adventurers watch them go, their departure leaving a palpable void. For the old hero, a new journey was beginning, one far different from any he had known before. The path ahead remained unseen, shrouded in the uncertainty of a changed world. As they ride out of town, Dandelion asks Amber why he would form a party with him, but Amber dismisses the question, telling him to stop wasting time and hurry up. They arrive at the besieged village to find it in flames and ruin, its streets filled with hulking monsters and brutish goblins facing off against the last of the guards. Inside the village, the monsters run rampant, smashing through doors with crude weapons while others guzzle down stolen ale amidst the chaos. Without hesitation, Amber draws two gun-like magical mediums and unleashes a blinding volley of energy that tears through the street. He calmly takes aim, his expression one of cold, detached efficiency as magical energy gathers at the muzzles of his weapons. The explosive blasts of light rip through the horde of monsters, obliterating the smaller ones in an instant. His guns fire in rapid succession, sending out beams of pure power guided by glowing magical circles that form in the air. Dandelion watches from behind, his eyes wide with utter astonishment at the destructive power on display. He realizes in that moment that this is the incredible strength of a modern S-rank adventurer. Amber turns to him, stating he will handle the monsters and ordering Dandelion to focus on rescuing the villagers, a task Dandelion eagerly accepts. Amber adds a sharp warning not to engage any enemies, as it would only cause more problems for him, prompting an irritated Dandelion to shout back that he understands. Following his orders, Dandelion cautiously peers around the corner of a stone building, searching for survivors. He immediately comes face to face with a towering, single-eyed Cyclops, far larger than any of the other monsters. A raw scream of pure terror erupts from Dandelion's lungs. Before the Cyclops can strike, it's blasted backward by a powerful magical shot from off-screen. Dandelion dusts himself off and gives a relieved wave to his unseen partner, thanking him for the save. Amber now stands before an even more formidable foe, a massive, armored orc who towers over him. Dandelion watches in horror as Amber's magic attacks dissipate harmlessly against the creature's body, having no effect whatsoever. Amber declares that if his attacks aren't working, he will simply analyze the monster to find its weak points. The analysis system flashes a warning, "Analysis not possible," causing Amber to mutter that he's never seen such a monster before, while Dandelion yells at him for being distracted. Amber quickly weighs his options, wondering if he should just keep firing different magic attributes at the beast until one of them works. Before he can decide, Dandelion suddenly charges past him, shouting a battle cry as he rushes the monster with his holy sword drawn. The armored orc turns its attention from the magic user to the charging swordsman. With a single, contemptuous backhand, the monster swats Dandelion through the air, sending him crashing into the side of a building. Amber screams that he's useless and should stay back, but Dandelion picks himself up, yelling that if analysis is impossible, they have no choice but to fight it the old-fashioned way. He shouts that since they are partners, Amber needs to count on him more, then charges back into the fray. As Dandelion clashes with the monster, Amber is stunned to see his analysis display flicker to life and begin processing data. He realizes with a jolt that the analysis only progresses when Dandelion attacks the beast directly. A thought crosses his mind as he watches the hero fight. Could this be the true hidden power of the legendary Holy Sword? Each of Dandelion's strikes causes small points of light to appear on the monster's body, revealing its hidden weaknesses. Seeing a new path to victory, Amber yells for Dandelion to keep attacking, promising to provide cover fire. He shouts that Dandelion is starting to understand. This is how they used to fight in the days before analysis magic became common. Dandelion yells in affirmation, pressing his relentless assault against the giant orc. Lost in the thrill of direct combat, he feels a surge of energy, declaring that he's feeling pumped up. The analysis bar finally fills, revealing the monster's complex weak point, a composite attribute of lightning and flame, requiring Amber to combine both magics for a finishing blow. With the data secured, Amber takes aim, gathering the maximum power of both elements into his weapons as he prepares to end the fight. He fires, but something is wrong. The monster is moving unexpectedly. The orc raises its massive arm, not to attack Dandelion, but to block the incoming magical blast. Amber's eyes widen in shock as the monster looks directly at him, realizing it was intelligently targeting the ranged attacker from the very beginning. Knowing he cannot dodge the creature's incoming counterattack in time, he braces for the impact. At the last possible second, Dandelion dives in front of him, blocking the monster's crushing blow with his holy sword. Straining under the immense weight, Dandelion grits his teeth and tells a stunned Amber that he is safe now. Amber's eye twitches, his composure broken as he registers Dandelion's words and protective stance. Dandelion confidently tells him to leave the rest to Hero Dan. A small, genuine smile appears on Amber's face as he observes the old hero's selfless act, remarking that he hasn't changed at all. With a powerful heave, Dandelion shoves the monster's arm back, creating an opening. He roars at Amber to finish it now while he has the chance. Amber agrees and unleashes the full force of his composite spell. He declares it's time to finish this as he fires the blast of swirling energy. A cataclysmic explosion of lightning and fire completely engulfs the monster, ending the threat for good. As the smoke from the final attack clears, a fragile peace settles over the ravaged village. The surviving villagers begin to emerge from their hiding places, and the young girl who sought help tearfully reunites with her mother. She runs to Dandelion and thanks him profusely, her gratitude pure and heartfelt. Dandelion collapses onto the rubble, complaining about his aching back but glad they managed to succeed, prompting Amber to remark that he's really something else. Sprawled on the ground, Dandelion admits he didn't manage to kill a single monster himself, but Amber corrects him, saying that Dandelion was able to defeat them all on his own. Dandelion dismisses it as flattery, but Amber insists he is serious, admitting with a smile that he was glad to have his help. Amber extends a hand down to the fallen hero. He then makes an unexpected proposal, asking Dandelion if they should form a formal party. Dandelion can only look up at him in stunned silence, completely bewildered by the offer. He asks why Amber would want him as a partner, and Amber replies simply that it is because Dandelion is a real adventurer. Though he doesn't fully understand Amber's reasoning, Dandelion's mind immediately goes to the financial benefits of partnering with an S-rank adventurer and he enthusiastically agrees to the proposal. Dandelion celebrates their new partnership, excited to start making money on high-rank quests, but Amber stops him, saying there is something they must do first. Amber states that, as his new friend, he is going to retrain Dan-san personally. He vows to re-educate the old hero and shape him back into the ideal warrior he once was, warning him that it will be tough. The retraining begins immediately, with Amber chasing a terrified Dandelion through the wilderness, firing magic blasts at his heels and yelling that their first exercise is to run all the way back to the guild. Back at the Adventurer Guild, a trio of female mages swoons at the news that Dan and Amber have teamed up, openly expressing their jealousy. They immediately crowd around Dandelion, demanding to know if the rumors are true and begging him to tell them how cool Amber is during quests. Dandelion looks away with a wry smile, stating that from his perspective, his new partner still has a long way to go. He thinks back to the previous quest, recalling the sight of Amber standing over him with a cool and imposing aura. Turning back to the girls, he quickly adds that he himself also has a long way to go and must focus on his training for the day. As he speaks, Amber himself appears, causing the girls to squeal in delight while Dandelion tries to back out of training by feigning illness. Amber gives him a chillingly sweet smile, ignoring the excuse and announcing that it is time for them to go. He grabs Dandelion by the collar and begins dragging him towards the exit, the unwilling hero digging his heels into the rug while the girls wish them a safe trip. Their training takes them to a remote river, where a small boat is moored at a rickety wooden dock. The next moment, Dandelion is screaming for his life in the water, frantically swimming away from two enormous, razor-toothed river sharks. Amber watches impassively from the shore, complimenting Dandelion on being an effective decoy and insisting there is no better way to train. He shouts that Dandelion's basic stamina is no better than a rookie's, and this harsh method is necessary to build it up from scratch. Dandelion screams back that he is in very real danger, but Amber calmly replies that he will only step in when the danger becomes truly life-threatening. The brutal training exercise continues along the length of the forested riverbank. Finally, an utterly exhausted Dandelion collapses on the shore next to the two massive, slain river sharks. A local fisherman approaches Amber and thanks him profusely for dealing with the monsters, allowing him to fish again, to which Amber replies that it is only natural for an adventurer to help those in need. As the two adventurers walk away, the fisherman cheers, ready to get back to his livelihood. Later, back in the guild, Amber places a small bag containing Dandelion's share of the reward on the table in front of him. Dandelion opens the bag and finds only 3 small coins inside. He looks up at Amber in disbelief, questioning if this paltry sum is really all he gets for his life-threatening work. Nearby, another group of adventurers loudly celebrates a 10 gold coin reward from a quest issued by Baron Joran, highlighting the massive pay gap. They boast about going for drinks and buying the latest equipment with their lavish earnings. Frustrated and resentful, Dandelion slams his fist on the table, declaring he can't take it anymore and demanding they take on quests from nobles for better pay. Amber looks at him with a cold expression and states that he does not choose his quests based on the size of the reward. A bewildered Dandelion asks what, then, is his basis for choosing a quest. Amber walks to the quest board and explains that he chooses based on a single criterion: whether or not there are people who are genuinely in trouble. He pulls a new quest from the board and shows it to Dandelion. The reward is a meager 5 copper coins. Dandelion throws a tantrum on the floor, refusing to go on another cheap quest, but Amber simply grabs him by the armor and drags him out of the guild once more. They arrive in a village that is in the process of being rebuilt. To Dandelion's surprise, the villagers greet their arrival with a massive cheer, thanking them for their help and calling them the heroes of the village. The young girl whose plea for help started their partnership runs up to them, beaming with gratitude. Dandelion looks around at the welcoming crowd, momentarily confused by the reception. Amber reminds him that this is the village they saved during their last quest. The girl excitedly tells them she's glad they are taking another quest to help people. She explains with a bright smile that thanks to them, everyone is now working together to fix the village, and they are especially grateful for Dandelion's help. Moved by her earnest words, Dandelion places a gentle hand on her head and declares that since it's her request, they have no choice but to do it. He soon discovers the new quest is simply helping the villagers with the heavy labor of reconstruction. While struggling to lift a heavy wooden beam, Dandelion grumbles to himself, wondering if Amber is slacking off. He then spots Amber across the way, effortlessly carrying a massive bundle of logs on his shoulder while efficiently directing the other villagers on their tasks. Dandelion watches in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how a mage could possess such incredible physical strength and stamina. He is broken from his reverie as someone approaches him from the side. It is the young girl, who offers him a drink of water with a concerned smile, asking if he is okay. He gratefully accepts the cup, thanking her for her kindness. As he drinks, he apologizes to her, feeling ashamed that he has not been very helpful with the physical labor. The girl passionately refutes this, insisting that other adventurers only take high-paying quests from nobles and that the fact he accepted their cheap request at all was enough to make her happy. She declares that in this day and age, Amber has become their village's one true hero. Dandelion falls silent, looking over at Amber with a new understanding. He watches as Amber works seamlessly with the villagers, mixing plaster and organizing the reconstruction with the skill of a master builder. A glimmer of admiration shines in the villagers' eyes as they look upon the selfless adventurer. As he observes the scene, Dandelion has an epiphany, questioning his own understanding of what it means to be a hero. That evening, back in the city, the mood is quiet and contemplative. Over drinks, Dandelion suddenly has a change of heart, startling Amber with his abrupt apology. He earnestly tells Amber that he finally realized during the day's quest that he truly wants to help people in need. Amber looks at him, surprised by the sudden and sincere declaration. Dandelion continues his line of reasoning, arguing that if the goal is to help people in trouble, it shouldn't matter if they are nobles, since nobles can also face hardship. Amber calmly asks what he is talking about, questioning if this means he no longer cares about the money from noble quests. The guild receptionist joins their table, explaining to Dandelion that no noble ever issues a quest because they are actually in trouble. She elaborates that if a noble faced a genuine crisis, they would mobilize the royal knights or city officials, not turn to hired adventurers. Dandelion looks utterly lost, unable to grasp the political reality of the situation. He asks why, then, do nobles bother to issue quests to the guild at all? Amber sighs, and asks Dandelion if he remembers a certain Duke Madrun. Dandelion recalls his former patron, Countess Madrun, and expresses his happiness that she was promoted to Duke for her contributions to his victory against the Demon King. He reminisces about how her patronage was essential to his success back in the day. A flashback shows him receiving expensive magical winter clothing from Madrun, a critical piece of equipment for his journey. Another memory, however, shows him taking advantage of her generosity, ordering the most expensive alcohol at a tavern and telling the staff to put it all on Madrun's tab. Amber explains the disastrous consequence. Madrun's promotion after funding the hero created a precedent, showing that nobility could advance their station through the power of money and patronage. This led other nobles to believe that they too could gain rank and influence by finding and sponsoring a second hero of their own. Dandelion is visibly shocked as the unintended consequences of his actions are laid bare. The receptionist leans in and confidentially explains that this is the real reason for high-reward, high-difficulty quests. They are mostly just nobles hiring powerful adventurers for show. Amber concludes that while some adventurers have grown stronger under noble patronage, the system has left the common people with no one to turn to when they are truly in need of help. Dandelion sits in stunned silence, processing the heavy truth that his past actions have corrupted the very nature of adventuring. Amber suddenly grabs him by the collar, his face intense, declaring that this is exactly why Dandelion must become a true hero once again. Now thoroughly drunk, Amber passionately slurs that as long as Hero Dan exists, no one will need a second hero, and together they can reclaim what it means to be an adventurer. He then collapses face first onto the table, his final words trailing off as he speaks of helping people truly in need. As Dandelion watches his passed-out companion, the receptionist quietly serves them their meal. A memory surfaces in Dandelion's mind of a war-torn city, its buildings reduced to rubble under a gray sky. In the midst of the devastation, a young, blonde-haired boy approaches him and asks if he, too, can become a hero like him. Dandelion looks down at the child with a gentle expression and assures him that he can. He encourages the boy to get strong so that he can help people in need in his place. The boy's eyes, identical to Amber's, light up with a fierce determination. Back in the present, Amber remains asleep on the table as Dandelion sips his drink by the window, lost in thought. Amber begins to wake up, groggily apologizing and admitting that he got drunk. Dandelion tells him it's fine, accepting the blame and stating that he was the one at fault. He reflects grimly that it seems he has changed the country for the worse far more than he ever realized. Amber, still dazed, mumbles that it's not entirely Dandelion's fault and says he'll stick around with him. With renewed purpose, Dandelion decides that if becoming a hero again is what's needed to fix things, then he will get back to work. He confidently states that the monster from the village was a weakling he should have been able to defeat easily, and vows to train harder. Amber, now more alert, corrects him, pointing out that the Cyclopes orc was a creature he had never seen before in his life. Dandelion casually waves off the concern, remarking that those types of monsters used to be common in the Demon King's territory. Amber's eyes fly wide open in absolute shock. He nervously posits that this could mean remnants of the Demon King's army still exist, a suggestion Dandelion finds amusingly trivial. Amber panics, shouting that this is a huge deal because the Demon King's army was believed to have been completely wiped out 20 years ago. He adds that the noble families are desperately searching for any sign of them to gain glory, leaving Dandelion looking uneasy. The scene shifts to a dark, ominous mansion built against a massive waterfall in a shadowy forest. Inside, a woman with demonic horns sits at a large desk, observing a magical image of Dandelion. Her gaze is fixed on the projection, her expression cold and calculating. She wipes a tear from her eye, her voice filled with venom as she identifies the man in the image as Danville, the one who killed her father, and notes with contempt that he has chosen to reappear now, at the Adventurers Guild. A new quest notice catches the eye of a passing adventurer. The ornate posting announces a mission to find and eliminate remnants of the Demon Lord's army, offering a staggering reward of 100 large gold coins. A wave of stunned silence falls over the guild hall as adventurers murmur in disbelief at the mention of the long-forgotten foe. The silence shatters in an instant, and the hall erupts into a chaotic mob as every adventurer present surges towards the quest board, fighting to be the one to claim the quest and become the next legendary hero. Dandelion watches the frenzy from a nearby couch with an air of detached amusement, remarking on how worked up everyone is getting. Amber, sitting beside him, calmly notes that since the words Demon Lord's army have not appeared on a quest in 20 years, the excitement is understandable. He then sighs and looks at Dandelion with disappointment, stating he never imagined his partner would be hiding such a significant secret. Dandelion defensively retorts that he had no idea the small fry, one-eyed monster they fought would turn out to be so valuable or important. He begins to second-guess their decision to report the monster, though he concedes that the nobles would have posted a similar quest eventually anyway. Amber agrees that this is not an ideal situation, but insists that staying silent would have been worse, as it would be too late to act if casualties started to mount. Dandelion scoffs at the brawling adventurers, expressing his doubt that their modern, analysis-based fighting styles would be of any use against the one-eyed monster. Amber reassures him that the high-ranking adventurers employed by nobles should be able to handle it, but Dandelion worries there will be no room for him to get involved. A calm voice cuts through the noise as a young woman in a dark, hooded cloak states that she is the one who posted the quest. She turns to Dandelion and Amber, saying that she will be in their care for the day. Amber recognizes her as their client, confirming she is the one who requested a guard escort. The hooded girl's face breaks into a wide, excited smile as she greets Dandelion, saying it is good to see him again. Dandelion is taken aback, asking if he knows her, to which she replies that they met 20 years ago. He strokes his chin, trying to recall their meeting, but ultimately concludes that he must have saved hundreds of children like her during his travels. The girl looks crestfallen that he doesn't remember her, and Amber dryly observes that yet another person was saved by Dan in the past. A blush of indignation spreads across her face as the reality sinks in, while Amber internally notes that she must be over 20 years old to have met Dan that long ago, despite her youthful appearance. Just then, a sudden hush falls over the guild as all eyes turn towards the entrance. A wave of shock and awe ripples through the crowd of adventurers as they stare at the newcomer. A tall, imposing figure dressed in an immaculate dark uniform and a wide-brimmed hat that conceals their face stands silently in the doorway. One of the adventurers points out the intricate crest emblazoned on the figure's attire. The crowd realizes with a collective gasp that this is a messenger from the immensely powerful Duke Madrun. Confusion spreads among the adventurers, who had all heard that Duke Madrun never hires from the guild. The frenzy for the Demon Lord quest is instantly forgotten as the crowd surges toward the messenger, each adventurer desperately pleading to be hired into the Duke's prestigious employ. Dandelion remarks how much of a big shot Madrun has become, and Amber adds that the political power and wealth gained from serving her would be incomparable to any other noble. Amber speculates that Madrun must have heard the news about the one-eyed monster's reappearance and decided to make a move personally. He glances suspiciously at Dandelion, asking if he was the one who called her, but Dandelion vehemently denies it, insisting he wouldn't contact her just because he was short on cash. The messenger ignores the clamoring crowd and walks with purpose through the parted sea of adventurers, stopping directly in front of Dandelion. The messenger leans in close and asks him to confirm his identity as Danville. Before he can react, the messenger announces that Duke Madrun has officially summoned him. The surrounding adventurers erupt in outrage, questioning why the old fart was chosen over them and demanding a chance to prove their superior skills. The messenger leans in again and whispers something only Dandelion can hear. With a single sharp command to shut up, the messenger instantly silences the entire protesting crowd. Amber tells Dandelion he has to go, as a summons from Duke Madrun cannot be refused, and assures him that he can handle their current escort quest alone. Dandelion apologizes to their client, the hooded girl, promising he will be back right away before the messenger leads him out of the guild. The girl and Amber watch in silence as the guild doors swing shut behind them. Amber turns to her and asks if they should proceed with the quest. She asks if it is all right not to wait for Dan, but Amber dismisses her concern, saying they should hurry on ahead since he promised to return soon, and confirms their quest is to guard her while she gathers fruit. With a strangely blank smile, the girl agrees, placing herself in his care. Elsewhere, Dandelion sits uncomfortably in a luxurious carriage as it travels through the city streets. The messenger removes their hat, revealing the beautiful and imposing face of Duke Madrun herself, who complains about the intolerable noise of the Adventurers Guild. She looks at Dandelion with an intense gaze, stating with unnerving precision that it has been 20 years and 68 days since they last saw each other. Dandelion addresses her by name, correctly deducing her identity and noting that disguising herself is not her usual style, as she has always hated wasting time. Madrun replies that, on the contrary, she came in person specifically to avoid wasting any time. She gestures towards a large, locked case resting on the seat beside her. Dandelion asks her if the job she has for him is truly that important. In response, she opens the case, revealing it to be overflowing with a mountain of glittering gold coins. She watches his reaction with a cool, unreadable expression. Dandelion stares at the fortune, utterly speechless at the immense wealth before him. Madrun explains that she has been using her authority to suppress all information regarding his return and his divorce from the princess, meaning the king is still unaware of his current situation. The shocking revelation leaves Dandelion reeling as he asks what she wants from him. She leans in very close, her voice a low command as she tells him to become hers. Her lips almost touching his ear, she adds, "Just like the old days." Meanwhile, deep in a rocky forest, Amber and the hooded girl arrive at their destination. As Amber kneels to help her gather some fallen fruit, the girl deliberately stomps on one, dirtying her shoe with a crunch. Amber's senses immediately flare with suspicion, and he stands up to ask who she really is. The girl ignores his question, complaining under her breath about her dirted shoes. She then smiles, saying it's fine as dark, shadowy tendrils begin to emanate from her body. Tossing her hood back, her face twists into a demonic sneer as she declares that the charade is over anyway. An enormous, armored ogre materializes from the shadows directly behind the unsuspecting Amber. His eyes widen in shock as he senses the immense presence. He throws himself to the side just in time to avoid the ogre's massive club as it smashes the ground where he just stood. The girl mockingly calls him an insect groveling in the dirt and warns him that she will not let him get between her and Dan. She gives a simple, brutal order to her monster: crush him. The ogre lets out a deafening roar as it swings its club in a deadly arc. Amber dodges the blow and immediately prepares a counterattack, his magic circles glowing as he targets the creature's weakness. He fires his spell, confident in his analysis, and strikes the ogre dead on. His blast, however, has no effect, and the monster stares back at him, completely unharmed. The girl scoffs at his failure, explaining that when demons create underlings, they alter their weaknesses, a basic fact he should have known. Amber is horrified to learn the analysis is wrong. He questions her use of the word demons, as he believed Dandelion had wiped them all out 20 years prior. In response, an entire legion of identical one-eyed ogres emerges from the surrounding woods, trapping him. Amber stares in disbelief at the impossible number of powerful monsters that now surround him. The girl declares that they will begin the bloodbath by killing him, as she enjoys making her events flashy. She finally reveals her true name and title, Zenobia, daughter of the Demon Lord, and proclaims that she will celebrate the hero's return with a sacrifice of blood. Madrun lays out her proposition: defeat the Demon Lord and in doing so, become hers. Dandelion calmly assesses the situation and asks his former patron a simple question: how long has she been in love with him? Madrun's composure shatters as she erupts in a flustered rage, yelling that his suggestion is disgusting. She hastily clarifies that her offer is merely to help him in his duties, just as she did in the old days. Leaning in close, she reminds him that her patronage is not a bad deal, especially since he still needs to repay his debts to the princess he divorced. Dandelion's eyes drift to the chest filled with gold, a flicker of hope in his expression as he realizes that with so much money he could finally regain his freedom. He lunges for the case, but Madrun slams the lid shut on his hands before he can touch a single coin. As Dandelion nurses his crushed fingers, she coolly pours the coins back into their container. He regains his composure and remarks that her new tactic of offering a large sum up front is not like her at all, but rather something the other nobles would do. Madrun falls silent, her gaze distant as she considers his words. She deflects the comment by changing the subject, asking if he has bothered to check on his own hometown in the 20 years since he left. Dandelion looks out the carriage window at the bustling, peaceful streets, observing that with no major incidents, adventurers can now make money safely. Madrun tells him that the current peace is completely different from the chaotic, war-torn era of the past. She explains that the world changed after his battle 20 years ago, as humanity finally acquired the magical technology that the demons had been monopolizing. The entire era of warfare shifted from a focus on weapons and swordsmanship to one dominated by magic. Dandelion sighs, admitting that since his only skill is with a sword, he has been called a burden by the new generation of adventurers. He tells Madrun that he is no longer worth the investment she is offering, but she insists that his perceived obsolescence is exactly why she needs him. She closes her eyes and states that she knows his current situation very well. Dandelion asks why it has to be him when she could hire anyone, but she promises him the best equipment and high-ranking allies to make up for any lacking strength. She declares that her plan is for the greater good and the very sake of the kingdom. Madrun explains that their country's economy was built on the military industry from the long war against the Demon King, exporting high-quality weapons and powerful adventurers. While their adventurers are still formidable, she notes that the weapon market is slowly collapsing due to the rapid, global spread of magic. She continues, stating that magic is new territory for all of humanity, and other countries have been racing to catch up to their military might for the past 2 decades. Because new adventurers lack experience fighting truly strong enemies, the veterans from the old war, who possess the most expertise, are now invaluable, which is why it has to be him. With a confident smile, she extends a hand to him, vowing that she will make him a hero once again. His thoughts drift to his new partner, Amber. He recalls Amber's passionate, if drunken, vow to retrain him to be the ideal hero he once was. With a newfound resolve, Dandelion smiles and apologizes to Madrun, politely informing her that he must decline her offer as he has a prior agreement. A look of pure shock crosses Madrun's face as Dandelion explains that he has already teamed up with a noisy youngster who is also trying to turn him back into a hero. He promises that once he is a hero again, they can work together like old times, and offers to escort her on her way as he and his partner are about to start a quest. Madrun looks out the window, noting with disdain that another fool wants to make him a hero. Dandelion smiles warmly, agreeing that Amber is a fool, but an honest one that he can't bring himself to abandon. Back in the forest, a massive explosion of light and sound erupts over the canopy. Amber is locked in a desperate battle with Zenovia's monstrous ogres. The brutal assault leaves him battered and bruised. His eyes are wide with shock and exertion as he struggles to keep up with the overwhelming force. He unleashes a powerful volley of magic from both of his guns, trying to thin the horde. Zenovia watches from a distance, correctly deducing that he has used a powerful medicine to amplify his magic, allowing him to brute force his attacks without regard for elemental types. She muses that while the tactic can work, it is incredibly dangerous to consume so much of such a potent drug. Amber cries out in agony as the magical feedback from the drug racks his body with pain. Zenovia smirks, remarking that he is surprisingly hot-headed for a modern adventurer who she thought would fight more cautiously. He ignores the pain and begins to charge an even greater amount of power into his weapons. He fires a single, massive beam of concentrated energy at his foes. The blast carves a wide trench of destruction straight through the forest. As the smoke clears, Amber looks up to see the result of his desperate attack. The forest is devastated, but his target is nowhere to be seen. Zenovia stands perfectly unharmed amidst the smoldering trees, condescendingly giving him points for creative thinking. A tiny, beast-like familiar, a side effect of the magical drug, looks up at her as she remarks that simple doping will not be enough to defeat her. The small creature, a miniature version of Amber, looks down in shock and yells about his missing clothes. Amber stares in horror, unable to believe that his full-power attack left her completely unscathed. As dark tendrils of energy envelop her, Zenovia tells him to witness the overwhelming difference in magical power between humans and demons. Her form begins to change as she prepares to attack, and Amber looks on in alarm. Her familiar declares it will attack from the side, trying to create an opening. Zenovia appears in a flash directly in front of Amber, pressing the barrel of her own gun-like weapon against his head. She asks the stunned adventurer if he wants to know a secret about demons. With a wicked grin, she explains that while weak humans rely on the easy way out with magic, true strength is the only way to kill a demon. She effortlessly shatters his durable orichalcum gun with a single, powerful blow. She adds that even orichalcum was originally a demonic resource and is wasted on a weakling like him. She follows up with a lightning-fast punch that sends him staggering back. Amber barely manages to stay on his feet, realizing he is completely outmatched in a close-quarters fight. He knows he needs a physical weapon to stand a chance, as his magic is useless against her. His thoughts turn to Dandelion's holy sword, but he knows Dan in his current state is too weak to wield it effectively, a fact Zenovia seems to know as she taunts him by offering a free hit. Utterly defeated and disarmed, Amber can only watch as Zenovia stands over him with her arms outstretched, declaring that this isn't even a fight. He realizes with a jolt of panic that Dandelion is on his way back, and that this situation is dire. With grim determination, he resolves that he must do something about this demon before Dan arrives, no matter the cost. He prepares a handful of small, black spheres, ready to risk his life on a final, desperate gambit. At that exact moment, a cheerful voice calls out his name, and he looks up to see Dandelion jogging towards them through the trees. Amber is horrified, wondering how he could have gotten back so quickly. He immediately shouts at his partner to stay back and run away. Dandelion, however, seems completely oblivious to the danger, looking at Zenovia's revealing combat attire and asking Amber if their client changed her clothes. Amber desperately screams at him to run for his life. Zenovia casually tosses the elf aside like a rag doll, shouting for him to get out of the way. She then leaps gleefully into Dandelion's arms, nuzzling against his chest while he stands frozen in shock. She playfully asks if he remembers her, and Dandelion can only comment on the heavy, pounding magical power radiating from her body. His eyes then widen in recognition, and he shouts out her name, Zenovia. He excitedly tells her that he remembers now, and that he would have recognized her immediately if she had released her powerful magic from the start. Lying injured in the bushes, Amber is utterly baffled by the revelation that the two of them know each other. Dandelion casually introduces Zenovia to him as the Demon King's daughter, explaining that because he fought her father for so long, they naturally got acquainted. He fondly pats Zenovia on the head, remarking on how much she has grown, leaving Amber to wonder how one, naturally, ends up in a relative-like relationship with the enemy. Dandelion explains that when you spend your days fighting for your life and your nights drinking with your foe, these things just happen. A flashback shows a younger Dandelion drinking with the fully armored Demon King, who drunkenly jokes that if Dan defeats him, he'll give him his daughter's hand in marriage. Zenovia explains that she heard Dandelion had returned and came to see him, only to find the new generation of adventurers looking down on him, which spurred her to action. She proudly reveals her grand plan, to create powerful monsters that only Dandelion's holy sword can defeat, thereby forcing everyone to recognize him as a hero again. Amber realizes the one-eyed monster was her creation, and Zenovia promises to make the next one even stronger. She hugs Dandelion tightly, urging him to hurry up and become the strongest hero once more. With a blissful expression, she declares that once he does, they can finally get married, just as her father promised. Amber can only look on in a state of utter, catatonic shock, his mind unable to process the absurdity of the situation. A lone voice cuts through the quiet of the forest. Zenovia squeezes Dandelion in a bone-crushing hug, excitedly telling him about the bridal training she undertook and promising to cook for him. Amber's hand clamps over her face, prying her away from the struggling hero. He shouts that the idea of a demon marrying Dan-san is utterly ridiculous. Still holding her back, he angrily questions her motives and admonishes her for involving Dandelion in her strange matchmaking scheme. Zenovia retorts that Amber is one to talk, treating Dandelion like a lackey and forcing him to do menial jobs, but Amber insists it is special training to help him regain his prime strength. With fierce conviction, Amber declares that Dan-san is the perfect hero and that humanity has no need for a cheap, manufactured imitation. As their argument escalates, Dandelion steps between them, pleading for them to calm down. To Amber's complete bewilderment, Zenovia suddenly grasps his hands, her eyes shining with delight as she exclaims that he finally understands her intentions. The scene abruptly shifts to a tavern, the animosity between the two forgotten. Zenovia and Amber enthusiastically clink their mugs together, nearly crushing Dandelion's head in the process as they loudly toast to him being the one and only true hero. The other patrons join in the toast, and Zenovia proudly states that only they truly understand Dandelion's greatness. Dandelion watches with tears in his eyes, completely baffled at how the two went from bitter rivals to best friends in mere moments. He leans back with a sigh, deciding that some things just can't be helped. Zenovia throws an arm around his shoulders, announcing her decision to join their party and help him become a hero again. Amber immediately objects on the grounds that she's a demon, but Zenovia waves off his concerns, asking Dandelion for his approval. Dandelion hesitantly agrees that he supposes it's fine, which sends Zenovia into a cheer and leaves Amber looking betrayed. Amber concedes but sets a condition. She must first apologize to the village she attacked and offer them an anti-demon charm from her father's treasury as a gift. The party travels along a riverside path leading to a quaint town. Dandelion happily narrates that with Zenovia's power, the party's strength increased, allowing them to take on harder quests for bigger rewards, while Amber sighs that he won't be held responsible for the consequences. A massive, brutish ogre brandishes its club, ready for a fight. While observing an ogre in a small village, Amber warns that the quest is unusually difficult, but Dandelion tells him not to underestimate him. Zenovia steps forward and begins a summoning ritual, dark energy swirling around her. Amber looks on in shock as she conjures a massive, terrifying dragon from thin air. The dragon unleashes a devastating breath attack upon the unsuspecting ogres. In an instant, the monsters are completely vaporized, leaving nothing but scorched earth behind. Only a wisp of smoke remains where the ogre once stood. Dandelion casually remarks that it turned out to be an easy quest after all. He cheerfully raises his fist, suggesting they head back to the guild and split their reward. Amber can only stare in silence at the colossal dragon now occupying the village square. He asks Zenovia if she intends to just leave the dragon there, but she explains that she made a contract promising it this land, so it will not be returning. Dandelion shouts in disbelief at the revelation that a dragon will now be their neighbor. The village chief runs up to them, thanking Amber for defeating the ogre. His gratitude quickly turns to panic as he spots the dragon, screaming that this is a far worse situation than before. Back at the Adventurers Guild, a shocking rumor begins to circulate: Amber has failed a quest. The other adventurers are in disbelief, realizing his perfect 100% completion rate has been broken over what was supposed to be a simple side quest. They gossip amongst themselves, pointing at the strange woman who has suddenly joined his party. Dandelion tries to console a deeply depressed Amber, reassuring him that the dragon isn't attacking anyone, while Zenovia smugly comments on how popular she is everywhere she goes. He tells Amber that failing a quest or two is nothing to worry about and that they should just forget it and move on to the next one. Amber remains catatonic with despair, muttering that his life is ruined, so Dandelion decides to pick their next mission. He stands before the quest board, examining the various postings with rewards ranging from a few copper coins to a lucrative 80 gold coins. His eyes lock onto the quest with the highest reward, and he resolves to take it. Just as he reaches for the high-paying job, Zenovia snatches a different quest from the board, declaring it to be the most suitable one for him. Dandelion groans when he sees she has chosen a quest with a reward of only 50 copper coins. The quest title, Investigation of the Dragon Bone Tomb, immediately draws the worried attention of the entire guild. Two nearby adventurers rush over, pleading with Zenovia to skip that particular quest. She glares at them with contempt, sticking her tongue out and telling them to shut up. As she continues to argue with them, the guild receptionist arrives to explain why everyone is so concerned. She reveals that the Dragon Bone Tomb is the oldest and most difficult uncompleted quest in the guild's history, one that only rookies seeking fame are foolish enough to attempt anymore. Zenovia's eyes light up with excitement, proclaiming that an impossible quest is the perfect stage for Dan to prove himself. Amber snatches the quest notice from her hands, sternly telling her that she can't take it and asking if she paid any attention to the receptionist's explanation. Dandelion approaches his partner, asking if he's feeling any better, but Amber just glares at him, saying there's been no improvement. Zenovia grabs Amber by the collar, demanding to know what's so wrong with the quest she chose. He explains that the tomb is filled with so much residual magical energy that exploration magic, a skill humanity learned from demons after the war, is completely useless inside, and adventuring without it is suicide. Dandelion looks on, realizing just how convenient and reliant on magic the world has become. Amber finishes by stating that exploration magic is an adventurer's lifeline, and ignoring areas where it can't be used is the first rule of survival. A smug voice greets Amber from behind, and he turns to see another adventurer who taunts him for failing a quest and calls him a hypocrite. Amber recognizes the man and dismisses him with a cold glance. The receptionist whispers to Dandelion that the newcomer is Bearable Milo, the guild's other S-rank adventurer, and that he and Amber have a long and bitter history. Amber ignores the taunt, stating that he doesn't care about rankings. Adventurers exist to help people in need. Milo just smirks, calling Amber's failure of a simple quest pitiful. He condescendingly tells Amber to stick to easy, safe quests, as he could never handle a real challenge like the Dragon Bone Tomb. Zenovia interjects, telling Milo that the quest is too dangerous for Dan in his current state and that she's going regardless. She then turns her attention to Amber, asking if he has no trust in Dan and reminding him that her father always said heroes are meant to challenge the unknown. Amber is left speechless by her impassioned words. He tries to argue that Dan doesn't even want to go on such a low-reward quest, but Dandelion surprises everyone by calmly saying, "Let's do it." Dandelion places a reassuring hand on his partner's shoulder, telling Amber that as long as an S-rank adventurer like him is with them, they can manage somehow. Touched by Dandelion's unexpected vote of confidence, Amber's eyes well up with tears. With the decision made, Zenobia cheers that they are going, and Amber warns her not to do anything silly. Milo confronts Amber one last time, questioning his sanity for seriously taking on an impossible quest where he could die. The other adventurers try to stop them, with Milo even offering not to mock Amber if he quits now, but their pleas fall on deaf ears. Amber simply says, "We're going," and the three of them head for the door. Milo can only watch as Zenobia excitedly drags his rival away to a likely doom. The party travels to a desolate, frozen wasteland surrounded by jagged mountains. They approach a large, icy mound that serves as the entrance to the Dragon Bone Tomb. As they get closer, Dandelion feels an immense pressure, remarking that the magical power leaking from the dungeon alone is insane. Zenobia, however, is unfazed and cheerfully asks if they are ready to go in. The moment they step inside, Zenobia is overcome with nausea, doubling over and declaring that the magical energy in the tomb feels rotten and weird. As Dandelion rushes to her side, Amber tells them to wait while he casts a light spell. A bright magical light emanates from Amber's outstretched hands, but it flickers weakly. Amber stares at his hands in disbelief as the light spell sputters and dies completely. He realizes with dawning horror that not only is exploration magic useless here, but all other forms of magic are being nullified as well. Suddenly, a massive stone gate slams down behind them, trapping them inside the dungeon. Dandelion immediately gives the order to retreat. The gate crashes shut with a deafening boom, sealing them in total darkness. Dandelion smiles grimly into the pitch-black void, observing that it seems there is no way back now. The Dragon Bone Tomb waits silently within the desolate, frozen mountains. Trapped in the pitch-black entrance, Amber struggles against the sealed stone gate, but his efforts are useless. Dandelion's calm voice cuts through the darkness, calling out to his panicked companion. Unfazed by their predicament, he suggests they simply hurry and proceed deeper into the dungeon. Amber turns, his face a mask of disbelief at Dandelion's nonchalant attitude in the face of mortal danger. After a moment of thought, however, he agrees with the logic, realizing that fighting any monsters near the sealed entrance with no room to maneuver would be a fatal mistake. Dandelion then calls out to the third member of their party, Zenobia. She is huddled on the ground, weakened by the dungeon's foul magic, and demands that someone give her a piggyback ride. Dandelion immediately passes the task to Amber, claiming his own heavy backpack makes him unable to carry her. Amber sighs and offers his hand to the demonic princess, but she flatly refuses his help. She throws a tantrum, insisting that she only wants Dan to carry her and no one else. As she struggles against Amber, Dandelion suddenly shouts for them to watch out. He lunges forward, shoving them both to the ground just as a deadly spike trap descends from the ceiling. Thrown to the floor, Amber and Zenobia look up with wide, terrified eyes. They see the dense thicket of razor-sharp spikes that had been poised directly above their heads. Dandelion holds the entire mechanism back with his own strength, calmly remarking that it was a close one. His companions scramble to their feet and thank him for the save, after which Amber asks how he could have possibly known about the trap. He then notices an old, rolled-up piece of parchment in Dandelion's hand and asks if it is a map. Amber is stunned, asking where on earth he could have acquired a map for a dungeon like this, to which Dandelion confidently replies that of course he has one. He proudly explains that he drew it himself by compiling information from the reports of previous adventurers, which he charmed the guild receptionist into showing him. Zenobia is impressed that the receptionist would bend the rules like that, and Dandelion boasts about his essential adventuring techniques. He fondly recalls that back in his day, befriending the guild staff to extract as much information as possible was a crucial survival skill. Amber acknowledges the truth in this, noting that while modern adventurers get all their information through magic, here they are forced to do things the old-fashioned way. Dandelion agrees, his expression turning serious as he states that they cannot afford to die in a place like this. The party is sent tumbling through the dark corridors as Dandelion suddenly trips over an unseen obstacle. Zenobia groans, feeling sick and dizzy after the fall. Using his hand-drawn map, Dandelion warns of an upcoming pitfall and instructs the others to jump on his signal. He gives a swift countdown as they approach the edge of the chasm. On his command, they leap into the air just as giant, armored insects swarm out from the pit below. While airborne, the nauseous Zenovia unfortunately gets sick all over Amber's back. They land safely on the other side, the pit-dwelling creatures unable to pursue them. Dandelion looks back at the insects, noting with satisfaction that it was a close call but they are now safe. He then turns to his companions, only to see Zenovia being sick once more. Dandelion can only stare, his face completely blank at the unfolding chaos. A short while later, Amber and Zenovia are ensnared in yet another trap, hanging upside down from the ceiling by thick vines. Dandelion looks up from the cavern floor, casually asking his dangling companions if they are okay. Amber laments how difficult dungeon clearing is without knowing the trap locations, while Dandelion tries and fails to cut the impossibly tough vines. Zenovia spots movement in the darkness below and urgently shouts a warning to Dandelion. From the shadows, a swarm of massive, chittering spiders emerges, surrounding the lone hero. Dandelion immediately identifies the creatures as sneer spiders. He stands his ground, weapon at the ready, preparing to defend his trapped companions. From above, Amber worriedly asks if he can handle the swarm by himself. Dandelion reassures him, explaining that while the spider's threads are incredibly strong, their bodies are weak enough for even a rookie to defeat. After a brief but intense battle, he stands victorious over the defeated spiders, a fresh cut on his cheek. Having freed his companions, he proudly asks if he didn't handle the situation just fine. Amber admits that Dandelion saved them, though he can't help but add that he struggled as much as a rookie would have. Zenovia, however, suddenly breaks down into tears, declaring that she is done with the quest and wants to go home. Dandelion sternly reminds her that her own father's dungeons were far worse than this one, calling her selfish. At the mention of the Demon King's dungeons, both Zenovia and Amber fall silent. Dandelion recounts the horrors he faced, describing traps that warped one's sense of direction and corridors that ended in clouds of deadly poison. Zenovia tearfully acknowledges that her father was indeed the worst, but that Dan still managed to defeat him, and with newfound resolve, she realizes this dungeon is nothing in comparison. Her spirits lifted, she happily skips ahead into the darkness, prompting a worried Dandelion to warn her not to wander off. Amber reflects on the strange feeling of security he gets from having Dandelion around, even in a place where his own magic is useless. The hero's presence seems to dispel all fear, and with a renewed sense of purpose, Dandelion tells his partner that it is time to move on. The three adventurers venture deeper, arriving in a vast cavern filled with towering rock formations. After hours of walking, Dandelion calls for a break, and Amber notes that they have long since gone past the areas detailed on the map. Dandelion reassures him that it's fine, as his instincts tell him this particular area is safe from enemies. He then pulls out some candy from his pack, offering it to his companions for a much-needed energy boost. As they rest, Amber admits that without Dandelion's old-fashioned experience and intuition, they would have already failed the quest or died in one of the many traps. Dandelion boasts that he was a master of dungeon conquering in his day, and his experience allows him to read the quirks of man-made labyrinths designed to mislead intruders. Amber looks at him, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He points out that while the dungeon certainly has man-made traps, the cave system itself appears to be entirely natural. As if on cue, a section of the cave wall rumbles and slides away, revealing a hidden passage. Amber stares into the new opening, wondering aloud if that is the correct path forward. Dandelion confirms that it's their only lead and that they must proceed. Zenovia complains about a terrible smell emanating from the passage, but Dandelion promises they will retreat at the first sign of trouble. Following the tunnel, they emerge into a massive chamber and find the source of the smell, a colossal, coiled skeleton. The ancient bones are unmistakably those of a dragon's wing. Its massive, horned skull rests silently on the cavern floor. The three adventurers stand in stunned silence, gazing upon the sheer scale of the dragon's remains. They slowly approach the gargantuan skeleton, taking in the awe-inspiring sight. Zenovia wrinkles her nose in disgust, crying that the stench is especially awful here and that she wants to leave immediately. As she speaks, the skeletal dragon begins to stir, its empty eye sockets glowing with an eerie, malevolent light. Zenovia and Amber both agree that fighting the undead behemoth would be suicide and that they should retreat at once. Dandelion, however, takes a step forward and calmly declares that they are going to fight. He explains his veteran logic. In a man-made dungeon, traps and monsters are placed with intent, and something this suspicious must be guarding something important. The undead dragon lets out a piercing, spectral roar as it rises to its full height. Dandelion immediately regrets his bravado, realizing that in his current weakened state, he stands no chance against such a foe. He nervously begins to suggest that perhaps they should run after all. Inspired by his initial bravery, however, Zenobia passionately rallies Amber, shouting that Dan gave the order to fight and they must obey. Dandelion is left speechless and terrified as his companions ready themselves for a battle he knows he cannot win. Amber, moved by Zenovia's conviction and Dandelion's apparent trust in him, agrees that they are a party and must fight together as one. They both turn to Dandelion, their eyes filled with determination, and ask him for his instructions. Overwhelmed by their misplaced faith in him, Dandelion can only laugh weakly, remarking on how admirable they are. The trio stands united, ready to face the impossible challenge of the dragon bone tomb together. Dandelion stands alone against the skeletal dragon, its immense form lunging forward to attack. The hero cries out as he braces for the crushing impact. With his sword held high, he manages to block the creature's initial assault, the ground cracking beneath his feet. Zenobia watches in horror as Dandelion strains under the immense pressure, gritting his teeth and admitting he cannot hold on for much longer. The dragon presses its attack, the force of its blows sending shockwaves through the cavern. Dandelion's vision blurs from the pain, but his resolve does not waver as he thinks only of protecting his two companions. Unseen by the party, a group of other adventurers stumbles upon the battle, their faces etched with terror at the sight of the impossible foe. Zenobia feels another wave of nausea from the dungeon's corrupt mana, while Amber declares he can create an opening with what little magic he can still use. He tells Dandelion that while he can only manage a single spell, it will be up to the hero to land the final blow once the opportunity arises. Dandelion explodes with frustration, shouting at Amber for treating him like a weakling yet still expecting him to be the one to finish the fight. To explain the dungeon's unique properties, Amber uses an analogy, comparing a mage's own magic to a spark and the ambient mana in the air to oil. He elaborates that casting magic is about drawing the correct amount of oil from the air to match the spark, with stronger spells requiring more oil. Zenobia chimes in, describing the foul mana in the dungeon as the air itself being made of thick, rotten, stinking oil, which makes it nearly impossible to control how much is drawn in. Dandelion asks if having more oil wouldn't simply make the magic stronger, but Amber explains that if a spell spirals out of control, it would also severely damage the caster. He grimly concludes that a spell powerful enough to defeat the dragon would, if it backfired, not only obliterate the dungeon but the entire nearby city as well. Dandelion desperately suggests using a safe, weak spell to simply drain away all the corrupt mana, but Amber quickly shoots down the idea. He explains that a normal person could never handle absorbing such an enormous amount of magic all at once, then asks Zenobia if a demon might be able to. Zenobia shakes her head, admitting even she could not perform such a feat, prompting Amber to decide they must stick with Dandelion's original plan of fighting it head-on. She suddenly offers a new plan, stating that they will drain the magic from the area, and Amber asks if her power is capable of such a thing. Zenobia clarifies that she is not the one who will be doing it, Amber is. She admits she would rather not resort to such a dangerous method, but she will support him through it, warning him that if he fails to handle the power he will likely die. Dandelion, confused by their exchange, asks what she means by support. Amber's eyes widen in understanding, and he agrees to follow Zenovia's plan. Dandelion shouts in protest, but Zenobia cuts him off, announcing that it's time to begin. The dragon begins to move away, and Amber yells at Dandelion to stop it, saying they need more time to prepare. The three adventurers stand together, a silent agreement passing between them as they ready themselves for the risky gambit. With a sigh of resignation, Dandelion accepts his role as the decoy, acknowledging that there is no other choice. He grits his teeth, raises his holy sword, and prepares to face the undead dragon alone. He single-handedly engages the colossal beast, his sword clashing against its bony frame as his companions begin their preparations behind him. Amber, watching the hero struggle, turns to Zenobia and asks what she was doing all this time if not preparing for this moment. A torrent of dark, corrupt magical energy erupts from Amber's body, causing him to scream in agony. Zenobia explains that she has forcefully adjusted his body to become a vessel capable of absorbing all the surrounding magical energy, a process that is excruciatingly painful for a human. Amber writhes on the ground, blood pouring from his eyes and mouth as he endures the unimaginable pain. Even in his tormented state, his first coherent thought is to save Dan, a display of loyalty that Zenovia finds unbelievable. She reassures the suffering elf that it's okay, confidently stating that Dan will not be defeated by some rotting dragon. Her mind flashes back to a conversation she once had with a much younger Dandelion. She had bluntly asked him why he didn't die when he fought her father, calling him weak and pathetic. Dandelion had simply replied that it was precisely because he was weak. He had explained that humans, being weaker than demons, developed a specialized martial art to even the odds. This martial art was a system of techniques born from generations of fighting demons. In the present, Zenovia explains to the pain-racked Amber that this art is called Ka, and that Dandelion applied its principles to his swordsmanship. She declares that Dan is the one who practiced that art harder and more diligently than anyone else in history. A spark of understanding ignites in Amber's mind. Zenovia states with absolute conviction that even if Dan is weaker now, no mere monster could ever defeat the man that even her father, the Demon King, could not beat. Back in the present, Amber rises to his feet, his body now adjusted to the immense magical power flowing through him, and Zenovia tells him it is time. He stands bloodied and exhausted, but ready for the final move. He raises his guns, now glowing with the unstable energy he has absorbed. He runs past Zenovia, his focus entirely on the battle ahead. He grits his teeth, pushing through the immense strain on his body. He shouts to Dandelion to hang on for just 30 more seconds, as their preparations are almost complete. Dandelion, battered and at his absolute limit, thinks to himself that he should have just run away. He knows, however, that it is much harder to retreat when his companions are watching his back and counting on him. The dragon's massive wing slams down, sending shards of rock and ice flying. The hero grits his teeth against the pain, thankful for the brutal training of his youth that allows his body to remember how to fight even when his strength fails. Bloodied but unbowed, he pushes himself to his feet, declaring that he can still move. He focuses all his senses on his opponent, watching its movements, listening to its breathing, and anticipating its next attack. He narrowly dodges another devastating strike, his movements fluid and precise. He knows that his body will react on its own, just as it did during the war against the Demon King. Just as his strength is about to give out, Amber and Zenovia call his name, their preparations finally complete. A massive beam of purified light erupts from above, striking the undead dragon with immense force. Dandelion is shocked to see the dragon still standing after the attack and worries about the dangerous magical backfire. Zenovia smiles and takes a deep breath of the now clean air, explaining that Amber cast an explosive light spell that consumed all the corrupt magic in the area. Dandelion asks what they are supposed to do now that all the magic is gone, just as Amber collapses into Zenovia's arms, his task complete. Zenovia smirks, reminding them that as a demon, she is perfectly fine even without any ambient magic in the atmosphere. She unleashes her own innate demonic power, her body glowing with a dark energy. With a cry of, "Ready, go," she fires a powerful blast of her own at the weakened dragon. The beam of pure demonic energy slams into the beast, tearing it apart. She turns to a blood-soaked Dandelion and flashes a triumphant smile, and he can only remark that she is truly her father's daughter. With the dragon finally defeated, Zenovia rushes to Dandelion to celebrate their victory. The sudden movement and relief cause Amber to vomit, his body finally succumbing to the strain of the battle. Dandelion supports his unconscious partner, asking Zenovia if he will be alright, and she reassures him that she cast a healing spell on him. Zenovia stretches happily, relieved that the foul smell of the corrupt mana is finally gone. She realizes the undead dragon must have been the source of the dungeon's magic dampening effect, and with it gone, she can now use her detection magic. Amber wonders about the purpose of the dungeon, speculating that it was designed to test how adventurers would fare without their magical abilities. Zenovia uses her magic to locate the exit and points them down a previously unseen corridor. She happily leads the way out of the main cavern. The tunnel opens into a massive, glittering vault filled with unimaginable treasures. Dandelion's eyes sparkle like the gold before him, excitedly wondering if this is a bonus for completing the impossible quest. As he prepares to loot the room, Zenovia stops him, saying she senses people nearby and that they should investigate. They follow another passage and emerge into a beautiful, sunlit grotto with a large, pristine pool. Zenovia points towards the other side of the pool, confirming that someone is there. They see a luxurious, modern mansion built into the side of the grotto, a place completely out of sync with the ancient dungeon. A woman is seen sunbathing on a lounge chair by the pool. The party cautiously approaches the sleeping figure. The woman begins to stir, awakened by their presence. She sits up, revealing a familiar helmet, and Dandelion stares in utter shock, whispering the name of his former patron, Madrun. Dandelion stares in confusion at the luxurious mansion that stands inexplicably at the heart of the ancient tomb. He turns to his companions, asking why Duke Madrun is here, just as she awakens and recognizes him as Danville. She rises from her lounge chair, her poise unwavering despite the unexpected intrusion. Two maids instantly appear at her side with a robe, one of them remarking that she is lucky it was only Lord Danville who saw her relaxing. They gently chide her for lounging around when she has guests, leaving a bewildered Dandelion to wonder what is happening as the party is escorted away from the pool. The maids lead them into the mansion, thanking Dandelion for his hard work and guiding him toward a lavish suite. Once inside, they are treated to the highest level of hospitality, with maids providing Dandelion with delicious food and a relaxing massage. Dandelion finally storms into Madrun's parlor, where she is calmly sipping wine, and demands to know what is going on. Madrun simply tells him to stop yelling and calmly reveals that she was the client who commissioned the quest for the Dragon Bone Tomb. Zenobia immediately accuses her of creating the dungeon, calling her cruel for designing such a foul and dangerous place. Madrun dismisses the complaint with a bored expression, stating that she personally considered the dungeon to be a masterpiece. When Zenobia complains that the rotten magical energy made her throw up, Madrun explains that this was a necessary feature for filtering the adventurers. She laments that it took a full 10 years for anyone to finally complete her quest, as all the previous adventurers proved useless once their magic was sealed. She recounts how she has waited at the hidden villa for a decade, feeling like a fool every time another hopeful accepted the quest only to inevitably fail. She then offers a disingenuous apology for her poor hosting and tells them to enjoy her hospitality as a reward for their success. Dandelion sees that Amber has finally awoken, and Madrun comments on how amazing Dan is for clearing a quest she thought was impossible for him in his current state. Amber looks up, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and confusion. His eyes fall upon the Duchess, and he recognizes her as Duke Madrun. Madrun turns her attention to him, asking if he, the other one, has also decided to join them before suggesting they discuss the matter further. The scene shifts to the party relaxing in the luxurious accommodations Madrun has provided. Dandelion enjoys a massage while Zenobia is pampered by the maids. The maids playfully dress Zenobia in a variety of outfits, much to her delight. Later, Dandelion and Amber relax in lounge chairs by the pool while Zenobia swims. The party then moves to a large, ornate bath to soak and recover from their ordeal. Dandelion sinks into the hot water with a sigh of pure bliss. After a moment of thoughtful silence, he turns to his companion. He bluntly asks Amber if he has fallen in love with Madrun. Amber furiously sputters a denial, insisting that he has only been acting strangely because of the complexities of the situation with the nobles. He reminds Dandelion of their previous conversation about the state of the Adventurers Guild. He recounts how nobles now offer high-reward quests simply to gather powerful adventurers for their own prestige. He laments that because of this, it is the common people who can only offer low-reward quests who suffer the most. Amber admits that while he didn't say it at the time, he believes one noble in particular is responsible for letting this situation run rampant. He asserts that Duke Madrun has more than enough power to restrain the other nobles' influence over the guild, but she chooses to do nothing, speculating that she simply doesn't understand the plight of those with nothing. Dandelion listens, a memory of Madrun in her opulent mansion flashing in his mind. He tells Amber that he understands his feelings, but that Madrun has her own reasons, revealing that she was originally a poor noble herself. Amber is visibly shocked by this unexpected revelation. Dandelion recounts that when he first met her, she had just inherited a ducal title that was buried in debt, and despite her fancy dress, her house was falling apart. Amber questions why, if she understands poverty, she would choose to do nothing, and Dandelion explains that her pride was as insufferably high then as it is now. He insists, however, that she is not the kind of person to neglect others out of malice or laziness, and that he can say that much for certain. Amber looks at him intently, asking if he truly trusts her, and Dandelion affirms that he does. Having finished their conversation, Amber begins to get out of the bath. He is suddenly accosted by Madrun's maids, who playfully shout that he can't leave yet. The maids proceed to drag him back into the water with a great splash. At the other end of the bath, the maids are forcibly scrubbing a protesting Zenobia, telling her to stay still so they can wash her properly. Madrun appears, apologizing to Amber and explaining that she couldn't leave him alone with the Demon King's daughter. Zenobia panics, asking how she knew her true identity, but Madrun points out that unleashing such immense demonic power in the dungeon was a dead giveaway. Madrun reassures the young demon that she has no intention of spreading rumors about her, then changes the subject, asking if it's true she intends to marry the hopeless old man. Zenobia simply smiles, saying that Dandelion's current state doesn't matter, as he was the only person her father ever truly acknowledged. She gushes about how cool Dandelion was when he fought the Demon King, prompting Madrun to muse on the Danville of the past. A flashback shows a younger, more stressed Madrun poring over documents at her desk. The documents are a mountain of enormous invoices from high-class taverns and casinos, all run up by Dandelion and charged to her estate. She slams her fist on the desk in fury, exclaiming, "These idiots," and wondering if they are writing everything off as a business expense. In the present, she admits that thinking about the past gives her a stomachache, recalling how she thought Dandelion's reckless spending was going to bankrupt her. Zenobia, having escaped the maids, runs from the bathhouse, ignoring Madrun's protests. Madrun sits alone by the water, reflecting on the strange turn of events. The hero has returned, and he has brought the Demon King's daughter with him. She looks up at the starry night sky and remarks on the intriguing nature of fate. Later, the party is treated to a lavish feast, which Dandelion and Zenobia devour with gusto while Amber eats with quiet reservation. Madrun sips her wine, observing the scene with a detached amusement. After the meal, Dandelion and Zenobia lean back in their chairs, stuffed and happy. Dandelion decides it's time for answers and asks Madrun to explain what the quest was really all about and why she kept the magic dampening effect a secret. She explains that she only gave the guild 2 pieces of information, her identity as the client and the fact that magic couldn't be used, ensuring all other details remained confidential. Dandelion calls her methods harsh, pointing out that someone could have died, but Madrun insists she arranged it so no one would die, while also ensuring no incompetent, magic-reliant adventurer could ever clear it. Zenobia asks what she means by a filter, a part of her earlier explanation that had made her curious. Madrun reveals the truth. The dungeon was a test, her personal method for selecting adventurers worthy of her employment. She was testing them to see if they possessed the courage, intellect, and combat ability to succeed in an environment where they could not rely on their magic. She looks at Dandelion with a sly smile and tells him that this time, she will not let him say no to her offer. Dandelion sighs in resignation, saying it can't be helped. Madrun then turns to Amber and asks if he accepts as well, and he reluctantly agrees. Madrun smiles, declaring that as her new personal adventurers, she will entrust them with important quests of international significance. The weight of this new responsibility dawns on Dandelion, who admits he is not exactly thrilled by the pressure. Madrun tells him not to be like that and instructs him to go forth and make the name, Danville, famous across the land once more. As the party leaves, Zenobia notices that Amber is quiet and asks him what's wrong. One of Madrun's maids enters the room and reports that it seems someone else has also managed to clear the dungeon. A battered and heavily bruised Bearable Milo is being carried by his party members. One of them recognizes him as the other S-rank adventurer, Bearable. Milo stumbles towards Amber, grabbing his shoulders and asking if he is okay, explaining that he came all this way to help him. Amber stares at his rival with cold, empty eyes and tells him his help is not needed, instructing him to please go home. A flashback begins, showing the desolate, icy mountains where the Dragon Bone Tomb is located. Inside the treacherous dungeon, Bearable Milo curses his inability to control his magic in the chaotic environment. He finds his path blocked by a trio of giant, monstrous centipedes with vicious mandibles. Dismissing them as mere trash mobs, he pushes forward, worried that the body enhancement magic coursing through him will soon tear his own body apart. He grits his teeth, fighting through the excruciating pain as the unstable magic threatens to overwhelm him. Despite his suffering, he stands resolute, his back to the darkness from which he came. A memory surfaces of one of his party members, a young elf girl, weakly pleading for his help. Her desperate voice echoes in his mind, fueling his determination to push onward. He screams in defiance, vowing that he will not be stopped by something as trivial as this. With a surge of renewed strength, he cuts a path through the monsters, continuing his desperate advance. Back in the present, at Madrun's villa, Milo concludes his dramatic tale, proudly declaring that this is how he rescued Amber. The adventurers who followed him from the guild swoon at his story, calling him cool and amazing. Amber, however, looks on with a completely unimpressed expression and tells him to please stop making things up. A flustered Milo asks if Amber overheard him, then quickly backtracks, insisting he wasn't worried and was only doing his rival a favor out of pity. His own party members giggle at his transparent lie, and he snaps at them to be quiet. Amber coldly informs Milo that he has not fallen so low as to require saving from the likes of him. Milo retorts that he won't save him next time, to which Amber replies that he would actually prefer that. Dandelion steps between the two bickering S-rank adventurers and attempts to mediate, announcing that they will all be forming one big party from now on. Amber immediately objects, turning to Milo and suggesting he forget the whole thing, reminding him that he already has precious companions of his own. Milo's party members agree that it would be a huge problem for them if he left, even though they admit his personality sucks. With bright, supportive smiles, they give him a thumbs up. They cheer him on, overjoyed that he is finally getting his wish to team up with Amber, and encourage him to do his best. Milo is left speechless by his party's enthusiastic betrayal, while Amber simply stares at the ridiculous act unfolding before him. Deciding it's best to ignore the idiot, Amber suggests to Dandelion that they just pick a new quest. The two of them turn their attention back to the current situation in the guild hall. They see the adventurers who had previously been fighting over high-reward quests now lying collapsed on the floor, groaning in utter despair. Dandelion and Amber look on, confused by the sudden change in the atmosphere. Dandelion approaches the guild receptionist and asks what happened while they were gone, and she confirms that Lord Madrun has begun issuing quests. A wide grin spreads across Dandelion's face as he assumes this means the quest rewards will be exceptionally good. The receptionist smiles knowingly and suggests that it would be quicker for him to just take a look for himself. He examines the new quest posting from Madrun, a lycanthrope subjugation mission with a reward of only 10 silver coins. Dandelion's jaw drops in shock at the unexpectedly low pay. Zenobia glances at the quest board and exclaims that all the new quests are cheap. Dandelion looks around, confused by this turn of events. He sees the once arrogant and boisterous adventurers looking completely dejected and lifeless. The receptionist explains that there is an unspoken rule among the other nobles to never offer rewards higher than Lord Madrun's, so they have all been forced to lower their prices. Amber realizes Madrun's strategy. The moment she selected her personal adventurer, she began to restore balance to the guild's economy by setting fair, reasonable prices for quests. He processes this new information, his expression thoughtful and serious. Dandelion connects the dots, understanding that Madrun had allowed the other nobles' reckless spending to continue unchecked as a way to find a true adventurer who wasn't obsessed with money. Amber stares into the distance, pondering why she would feel the need to do this now, in what is supposed to be a peaceful era. The downtrodden adventurers now flock to Dandelion, begging him to put in a good word for them with Madrun, complaining that this guild was once the easiest place to make money. They wail in despair, crying that with such low rewards, it will be impossible for them to pay off the loans they took out for expensive equipment. Dandelion suggests that if they don't like the new system, they should just go to a different guild. He turns to the receptionist and asks if there are other guilds besides this one in the kingdom. She confirms that there are, though as an employee, she can't officially advise them to leave. She explains that there are 4 major guilds in total, one in each of the 4 cardinal directions, each managed by one of the 4 great dukes of the kingdom. Dandelion states that he came to the Southern Guild because he was most familiar with it, and asks if the others are managed differently. The nearby adventurers nod grimly at his question. Bearable Milo explains that while the guilds were all similar back in the old days, the Northern Guild has always been notoriously rough. He describes the brutal philosophy of the North. Failing quests and running from monsters are not forgiven, and in that harsh land, adventurers must get stronger or die. Dandelion shudders, remarking that it sounds just as unforgiving as it was 20 years ago. The other adventurers agree that the North's way of thinking is outdated. While the harsh training and strong enemies can make you stronger, it's meaningless if you end up dead. The memories are so painful for Dandelion that he declares his old trauma is coming back, and he would absolutely refuse to ever return to the North. He quickly changes the subject, asking about the guilds in the East and West instead. The receptionist explains that those 2 guilds have changed dramatically since their overseeing dukes were replaced. The East is now like a magic research institute, while the West has become known as a gambling hall. Dandelion argues that bigger rewards should be better for adventurers, and the receptionist agrees that is why so many people flock to the Western Guild, where the rewards are the highest. She adds a grim warning, however. The penalty for failure there is insane, and it is often said that for adventurers in the West, success means luxury, while failure means poverty. Dandelion is shocked to learn that failing a quest in the West actually puts an adventurer into debt, a fact confirmed by another adventurer who knew someone that moved there. That person, he explains, failed quests repeatedly, fell into massive debt, and then suddenly disappeared, with rumors circulating that they were sold into slavery to pay it off. The adventurers worry for a friend of theirs who recently left for the West, while Dandelion remarks that the entire system is completely messed up. Another adventurer chimes in, warning that while you can make decent money in the East, you will be forced to become a test subject. He clarifies that a mandatory condition for every quest completion in the East is to participate in an experiment for some new form of magic. The guild takes no responsibility for any accidents that occur during these tests, and to the mages in charge, adventurers are nothing more than convenient, disposable subjects. Dandelion looks on, his expression a mixture of pity and disgust. Zenobia calls humans stupid for creating such pointless systems, while Dandelion despairs at what has become of the guilds, a sentiment the receptionist confirms is due to the policies of the dukes who manage them. He realizes with a start that Madrun, who he had previously thought was problematic, is actually far better than her peers. He now understands that the other dukes are truly eccentric and dangerous characters. A flashback shows Madrun making an official announcement to the other dukes, declaring that she has chosen her exclusive adventurer. The other three dukes, the jovial Duke Rush, the stern Duke Fog, and the silent Duke Noctis, listen to her declaration. Duke Fog scoffs, noting that she has chosen the same man as before, but one who has proven his strength by clearing a quest no one could conquer for a decade. He expresses his disapproval, stating that he had heard Dandelion had grown much weaker and could not be entrusted with their important mission. Madrun calmly replies that his information is outdated, and that Dan has already regained the strength of his prime, privately calling him a nosy old geezer. Duke Fog remains unconvinced, pointing out that even at his prime, the old hero cannot use magic. His aide shares his concern, admitting she feels terribly uneasy about entrusting such an important quest to an old-fashioned warrior. Madrun coolly dismisses their worries, stating that it won't be a problem as his party members are well-versed in magic. The aide expresses a desire to see this for herself, and Duke Fog suggests Madrun prove her claims by showing off the hero's so-called regained strength. Madrun falls silent, her confident facade momentarily cracking. Duke Rush intervenes, telling the others not to be unreasonable. He proposes that if they are going to have a showing, it's only fair that all the dukes present their own exclusive adventurers as well. Madrun questions the meaning of such a display, but Rush insists it would make things more interesting. He smiles and makes a grand proposal, a joint quest involving all four guilds. Duke Fog grins, intrigued by the idea of holding such an event for the first time in 20 years. Duke Rush boasts that his own adventurer will not be beaten so easily and asks Madrun if she is fine with the friendly competition. With the other dukes in agreement, Madrun has no choice but to accept the terms. She curses inwardly at how complicated the situation has become, realizing that the adventurer who proves the most strength in the joint quest will be the one dispatched on the crucial mission. With her bluff called, she knows she has no choice but to bet everything on Danville. Back in the present, the adventurers at the Southern Guild are in a state of panic, begging Madrun to do something about the joint quest, which they consider a death sentence. At the lavish Madrun estate, the Duke gathers Dandelion's party to deliver a formal announcement. She reveals that the four major guilds, each under the patronage of a great duke, will be undertaking a joint quest. Dandelion remarks that the idea of a joint quest is nostalgic, while Amber notes that it is the first time he has ever participated in one. Madrun clarifies that this is the first such event in 20 years and should be considered a proxy war between the dukes, with the right to accept a certain crucial quest as the prize for the victor. Dandelion protests, arguing that a joint quest is supposed to be a cooperative effort, not a competition. He asks why the dukes don't simply work together on the important quest, but Madrun dismisses the idea as impossible, stating that relations between them have been at their worst ever since she rose to her station. Dandelion dryly comments that her souring of diplomatic relations is hardly something to brag about. Madrun continues, explaining that Duke Fog, the head of the Northern Guild, is suspicious of Dandelion's current capabilities and wants to see his true strength. Amber recalls the intimidating old Duke, and Madrun's maid confirms that it is well known Fog despises Madrun for having been the one to discover and sponsor the hero who defeated the Demon King. Dandelion winces, remembering how Duke Fogg relentlessly grilled him about the final battle at the Demon King's castle 20 years ago. He points an accusatory finger at Madrun, realizing that her rivalry with Fogg is the reason he is now being targeted. Bearable Milo scoffs, stating that the true target is only Dandelion, so he and the others are not even on the other Duke's radar, but Zenobia insists they just need to show off Dan's strength. One of Milo's party members formally addresses Lady Madrun. On behalf of the other adventurers, he requests a demonstration of Dandelion's supposed regained strength. Dandelion looks on in confusion as Zenobia clings to his arm, a strange tension filling the room. The scene shifts back to the Adventurers Guild, now buzzing with a new energy. The entire guild hall is in an uproar over a new announcement. A notice has been posted for a selection match to determine the guild's representatives for the joint quest, with a crucial addendum. If Madrun's chosen adventurers are defeated, the guild's quest rewards will return to their former high-paying standard. The adventurers erupt in a massive cheer, seeing this as a golden opportunity to restore their easy livelihood. They rally together, vowing to team up and take down Madrun's party, their desperation fueled by outstanding loans and the fear of financial ruin. One of the adventurers begins to strategize, pointing out that since Bearable just joined the party, their coordination should be weak, and Amber has not undertaken many high-difficulty quests. Another adds that on top of those points, their party also has an obvious weak link. With malicious grins, they all agree they can finally defeat the old hero, Dandelion. From a quiet corner, Dandelion and the Receptionist observe the tense and hostile atmosphere of the guild. Dandelion turns to her and asks about Bearable's history with Amber. He asks what the point of all the ruckus is, as he had heard something about needing to put on a demonstration. Bearable appears and explains that the ruckus itself is the entire point. By winning, their names will become known to all the other dukes. He adds with a smirk that he fully intends to sell his newfound fame for a very high price. He explains that the other guilds are currently looking down on their southern guild. Therefore, he predicts that the other 3 guilds will form an alliance to hunt them down from the very start of the joint quest. He grins fiercely, declaring that they must make the other guilds understand that they are strong, and that anyone who comes at them had better be prepared to get seriously hurt. Dandelion quietly processes this aggressive and confrontational strategy. He realizes the brilliance of the plan. By demonstrating overwhelming strength early on, they would force the other 3 guilds to become wary and turn on each other, giving their team a decisive advantage. Amber agrees with the assessment, stating that if they can successfully dominate the competition, the rest will be a breeze. He turns to Zenobia and tells her that he is counting on her to watch over Dan-san. He gives her a strict order. She is only to use her true demonic strength if the situation becomes truly dangerous. With the plan set, he tells Bearable it is time to go and dominate, and Zenobia playfully reminds him that he is their trump card. Bearable enthusiastically accepts his role, telling them to leave everything to him. At a set of ancient ruins, an official explains the rules of the selection match. It is an escort quest where each party must divide into 2 carriers and 2 escorts, with the goal of delivering a cargo package to the destination first. The assembled adventurers immediately understand the implications of the rules. They realize that the fastest way to win is not to race to the finish line, but to attack and eliminate the other team's carriers. Amber and Bearable exchange a silent, knowing glance, their strategy already aligned. The teams make their way into the crumbling stone ruins to begin the quest. Zenobia cheerfully tells Dandelion that they should do their best as the designated carriers, while loudly instructing Amber and Milo to protect him properly. As they proceed, Bearable smirks, noting that they already have a welcoming committee ahead. They are immediately ambushed by a massive crowd of the other adventurers, who have all teamed up against them. One of them sarcastically apologizes to the hero, while Dandelion mutters that they are behaving more like assassins than escorts. The rival teams completely surround them, their intentions clear. With a unified battle cry to fight for their livelihood, the mob of adventurers launches an all-out attack. Amber immediately erects a hexagonal magic barrier, effortlessly blocking the barrage of spells. He stands calmly within the shield, his gun-like weapon at the ready. He coolly tells Dandelion to go ahead as they had planned. An enemy adventurer attempts to bypass the barrier and attack the carriers directly, shouting for the others not to bother with Amber and to target the old man. His attack is intercepted by a flash of steel as Bearable appears before him. Bearable grins, telling the attacker that he will not let him get in the way. The other adventurers are impressed by the power of the 2 S-rank adventurers but note that they seem to have no coordination. Believing they can win through sheer numbers, they prepare to charge forward. To everyone's shock, Amber and Bearable are suddenly attacked from behind by their own party members. Amber's barrier easily deflects the surprise attack, the spells fizzling out harmlessly against its surface. The enemy adventurers are stunned, wondering how the two rivals who supposedly hate each other can coordinate so perfectly. A brief flashback shows Amber's internal thoughts, realizing that he will have to cover for the creepy Bearable to make their plan work. Their feigned lack of coordination having successfully baited their opponents, the escorts quickly catch up to the lead group of enemy carriers. They immediately opened fire, launching a surprise attack on the now defenseless carriers. The carriers cry out in shock as they are targeted by the powerful S-rank adventurers. While the escorts cause chaos, Dandelion leads Zenovia down a narrow, hidden alleyway, escaping from the main group of pursuers. An enemy adventurer uses a tracking spell to follow their movements on a magical map. He realizes they have entered a narrow choke point and orders his team to split up, with half going after Dan and the other half heading straight for the goal. Dandelion and Zenovia are shown skillfully navigating a treacherous shortcut, passing over a sleeping wyvern's nest. The pursuing team finds their tracking spell ineffective, as their targets are moving through narrow paths the spell cannot reach. Dandelion and Zenovia are eventually cornered on a high cliff by the other group of pursuers, who demand they hand over the cargo. Their leader offers to spare them if they surrender the package quietly. One of his companions notes that judging by the terrain, they must already be very close to the goal. A sudden sound from below startles the group on the cliff edge. In a flash, Zenovia grabs Dandelion and leaps from the cliff, much to the astonishment of their pursuers. They land safely at the bottom, right in front of the goal, and Zenovia cheerfully calls up to their stunned opponents. The guild receptionist, who is acting as the judge, congratulates them on securing first place, while Dandelion remarks that his past explorations of the country's ruins have finally paid off. At the finish line, Bearable stands triumphantly over the defeated adventurers, gloating to a battered Amber about his strength. The leader of the defeated team is in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend how they managed to wipe out the escorts and reach the goals so quickly. The sun sets over the ruins, the selection match concluded. Dandelion consoles the defeated adventurers, telling them not to be so down as their strategy and teamwork were solid. He explains that the only difference between their teams was that the enemy's hesitation in their decision-making gave his team the opening they needed to win. Mad Run appears at the goal, having observed the entire match. She addresses the defeated team, agreeing that their strategy was not wrong. She states that the only difference was that Danville's team acted without a moment of hesitation, securing their victory. She praises their teamwork, however, and tells them she has high expectations for their future growth, even offering to reconsider their rewards. The dejected adventurers are overjoyed by her words, and they crowd around Dandelion's party, their animosity replaced with admiration and respect. Mad Run looks on with a pleased smile, remarking to herself that it seems she has a better team than she initially thought. At his estate, Duke Fogg muses about the goals of a person named Rush and grants entry to his personal adventurers who have just arrived. A close-up reveals the fierce, intimidating face of a large tiger. The man accompanying the tiger is identified as Linus Maxwell, an S-rank adventurer from the Northern Guild. His companion, another S-rank adventurer named Eureka, timidly asks him to stop bringing live monsters back from quests just as the beast snorts, startling her. Duke Fogg erupts in laughter, praising the magnificent tiger, which Eureka notes has pleased Linus. Ignoring a nearby servant's exasperation, Duke Fogg announces that their next mission will be the 4-guild joint quest. He explains that the exclusive adventurers of all 4 dukes are assembling and warns his own adventurers not to underestimate the competition. Eureka mentions that the hero Dan has returned, which seems to be a source of irritation for Duke Fogg, who complains about that vixen, Mad Run employing Danville again. He clarifies that his main annoyance is with Rush for taking advantage of his ongoing conflict with Mad Run. Duke Fogg reveals the joint quest's objective: to explore the Demon King's treasury, a location Eureka recognizes as a forbidden area. The scene shifts to another location where someone is in disbelief over what they've just been told. Lady Mad Run sternly confirms her order for her adventurers to retrieve the most valuable item from the Demon King's treasury. Her adventurers, Bearable, Amber, and Dan, stand in stunned and confused silence. Dan immediately makes a break for the door, loudly refusing the mission while his female companions cheerfully try to restrain him. He struggles desperately, yelling for them to release him and vowing that he will not go on the quest. The others are confused, asking about the nature of the Demon King's treasury and whether it's the dungeon located beneath the Demon King's castle. Amber recalls her father showing her a heavily barred door and making her promise never to enter it. Lady Madrun explains that the location was sealed by royal decree right after the Demon King's defeat and its existence was kept secret from most adventurers. Bearable becomes visibly excited by the idea of being the first to explore a completely new dungeon. He enthusiastically tries to rally a stunned Amber, while another companion wonders if the dungeon was sealed because even Dan couldn't conquer it. Pinned to the floor, Dan clarifies that he never actually tried to explore it because he was stopped before he had the chance. When asked who stopped him, Dan reveals it was the Demon King, shocking his companions that he would heed his enemy's warning. Dan insists the Demon King was truthful when he warned him away, stating the treasury contained monsters and items so powerful that even the Demon King himself couldn't control them. As Bearable questions the existence of beings stronger than the Demon King, Dan tries to crawl away, still refusing to go. Amber expresses surprise, asking her companions if they were truly unaware of this. Bearable and another adventurer are left speechless by the revelation. Dan argues that since the treasury requires keys from all 4 dukes, his refusal should keep it sealed, and he demands Madrun relay his opposition. Lady Madrun begins to explain a complication regarding his refusal. A flashback reveals another duke, Rush, proposing the exploration of the Demon King's treasury for the joint quest. In the flashback, Duke Fogg furiously calls Rush an idiot for the suggestion. Lady Madrun is also shown in the flashback, stating her firm opposition to anyone entering the dungeon. However, Duke Noctis expresses delight at the idea, excited by the potential relics within, and votes in favor. With a vote tied 2 against 2, Rush notes that they cannot proceed without a majority. Rush then changes tactics, slyly bringing up the rumor that the Demon King had a daughter, which causes Lady Madrun to react with alarm. The mention of the Demon King's daughter sends Duke Fogg and Duke Noctis into a frenzy, with Fogg eager to defeat her and Noctis obsessed with experimenting on her. Lady Madrun realizes with dismay that their enthusiasm means they have both switched their votes, putting her in the minority. Rush gloats, saying she can no longer argue against the quest and speculates about the drama of a showdown between Hero Dan and the Demon King's daughter. Lady Madrun breaks into a cold sweat, wondering just how much Rush knows about the situation. The flashback ends with a shot of Rush smiling to himself. Back in the present, Lady Madrun somberly admits that she is unable to refuse the quest. Dan desperately pleads with her to find a way out of it. As he begins to mention the Demon King again, the floor beneath him starts to shatter. A heavily armored figure bursts through the floorboards from below. Dan stares in utter shock at the sudden intrusion. The party looks on in alarm as the armored intruder lands in the room. Everyone is on alert as the mysterious figure stands before them. Bearable recognizes the intruder, calling out the name Linus. He explains to the others that Linus is Duke Fogg's personal adventurer, formerly of the Northern Guild. The armored Linus stays silent, slowly surveying the room. He walks directly towards Dan, who is still on the ground. Concluding that Linus will not speak, Lady Madrun orders her guards to restrain him. Before the guards can react, Linus disappears in a flash of speed. He reappears instantly, holding Dan in his arms. Dan panics and tells Linus to stop and put him down. Amber shouts Dan's name and takes aim with her weapon. She fires a concentrated blast directly at Linus. The blast hits Linus squarely in the chest, but his armor absorbs the impact completely. The party is shocked that the attack had no effect, and Zenobia calls Amber useless. Zenobia lunges forward, vowing to crush the intruder herself. She lands a powerful flying kick against Linus. To everyone's amazement, even Zenovia's magic-enhanced attack is completely ineffective against the armor. Linus remains standing, completely unharmed by the attacks. He then leaps upwards, smashing through the ceiling and disappearing. From the floor above, Linus's companion Eureka calls down, informing them they are taking their captive. The scene shifts to the exterior of a large, Gothic-style building. Dan is dropped unceremoniously onto the floor of a large chamber. He finds himself inside a grand, unfamiliar hall. Dan looks around in confusion before recognizing his surroundings as the Northern Adventurers Guild. Eureka greets him, acknowledging that it has been a long time since they last met. When Dan fails to recognize her, she dismisses it as understandable after 20 years and states the reason for his abduction. Linus steps menacingly toward Dan, causing him to cry out in alarm. Eureka translates for the silent Linus, stating that in his current condition, Dan is unfit for the joint quest, a point Dan readily agrees with. Eureka then directly accuses Dan of having been inside the Demon King's treasury before. A sweating Dan tries to deny it, asking what she is talking about. She reveals she overheard him discussing it long ago and states that Linus will now force him to talk. Linus reaches a hand out towards Dan to begin the interrogation. Dan glares back defiantly, asking if they intend to torture the information out of him. Eureka coolly advises him to prepare himself. In a dark room filled with interrogation tools, cries of pain are heard. A battered and sweating Dan finally breaks, agreeing to talk. He collapses to the ground, promising to tell them everything he knows. Eureka relays Linus's verdict. With such low stamina, Dan would be a liability on the quest. Dan tries to bargain, offering information in exchange for being left out of the mission, but Eureka tells him he will be their guide and will undergo rigorous training. As Dan starts to speak about the treasury's interior, Eureka stops him. She covers his mouth, explaining that a principle of the Northern Guild forbids obtaining information about a challenge beforehand. Dan explodes in frustration at the seemingly contradictory and absurd rule. Eureka elaborates that the strong must face challenges head-on without resorting to such cunning. She clarifies that while prior knowledge is forbidden, gathering information on-site is permitted, making Dan's role as a guide acceptable. Eureka then conveys Linus's decision. They will explore the treasury together as a team, leaving Dan baffled. Dan questions the idea of them working together when the event is supposed to be a proxy war. Eureka smiles, calling Linus pure and cute, and explains that cooperation is natural on a joint quest and that Linus looks forward to adventuring with him. Linus leans over Dan, who can only stare back in bewildered silence. As Dan's cries echo into the night, Eureka announces the start of his energetic stamina training. The scene opens at Duke Fogg's grand estate, a place of stern, Gothic architecture. An enraged Zenobia appears at the gates, flanked by a nervous Amber and Bearable, shouting that she knows Dan is inside and demanding his return. Eureka emerges to meet them, calmly assuring the trio that while Dan is indeed here, he has not been harmed in any way. Zenobia immediately calls her a liar, insisting that she can hear Dan's screams from within the estate, but Eureka calmly replies that he is just training. She points to a high window from which agonizing screams are clearly audible, shouting that he is obviously suffering. Bearable tries to calm the furious demon princess, but she turns on him, reminding him that Eureka is the one who tricked them in the first place. He attempts to reason with her, explaining that the Northern Guild absolutely forbids sneaky tricks like lies and deceit, and that this place truly is just a training ground. As another pained groan echoes from the building, Zenovia's trust wavers, and she asks Bearable if they can really trust him. Eureka, unfazed by the commotion, holds up 3 fingers and makes a simple promise. She will have Dan ready in 3 days. 3 days later, Amber, Zenovia, and Bearable wait anxiously for Dan's return. The doors to the training hall open, and a transformed Dandelion emerges, his body now rippling with muscle and his presence far more imposing. His eyes are cold and empty, his mind seemingly focused on a single, unwavering purpose: to defeat his target. Bearable stares in horror, concluding that the infamous, torturous training of the Northern Guild has completely broken the old hero's mind. Amber, his face grim, apologizes to Zenovia, admitting that this outcome was far worse than he imagined. Zenovia, however, is ecstatic, her eyes sparkling with admiration as she declares that the training method is amazing and Dan has become incredibly cool. A completely baffled Amber can only stare, unable to comprehend why she is so happy about this disturbing transformation. Eureka explains that it is not just his appearance that has changed and tells Bearable to lend a hand for a demonstration of his new power. The group assembles at a large, empty coliseum, the stage for Dandelion's evaluation. Bearable questions if a sparring match against him is too harsh a test immediately after such grueling training, even as he compliments Dan's new physique. He smirks, however, stating that for someone who ran from the harshness of the North, Dan is the perfect opponent to test his skills against. He declares that he will not believe in the results of the training until he has seen them with his own 2 eyes. The 2 S-rank adventurers engage in a fierce sparring match, their movements a blur of speed and power. Dandelion effortlessly blocks Bearable's attack and lands a heavy blow of his own, sending his rival staggering back. Bearable is stunned, realizing with disbelief that Dan is easily keeping up with his movements without the aid of any body enhancement magic. Dandelion's eyes remain locked on his opponent, his mind a blank slate focused only on the command to defeat target. Amber watches in awe, remarking that Dan is moving just like he used to in his prime, while the armored Linus observes, pleased with the results of his training program. Amber turns to Eureka, asking why she and the Northern Guild would go to such lengths to help them, especially when Madrun called the upcoming quest a proxy war. She replies with a cryptic smile that it is a secret, but the reason is precisely because they are enemies. A flashback shows Duke Fogg instructing Eureka to leave all decisions regarding the joint quest to Linus. Eureka is surprised by this, having expected to be ordered to crush Madrun's forces, but Fogg simply states that as long as they demonstrate their strength, it is enough for him. She understands his true intentions and bows, vowing to live up to his expectations. Duke Fogg muses to himself that while the scheming Duke Rush may think he has him figured out, he cannot possibly predict the actions of a straightforward warrior like Linus. Back in the present, Eureka steps in and calls an end to the spar, declaring it's enough. The armored Linus clenches his fist, a silent gesture of approval for Dandelion's newfound power. Eureka announces that the joint quest will begin in 2 days and that, per Linus's wishes, their two parties will work together to achieve their goals. Amber is completely bewildered by Linus's attempt at a "let's do our best" pose. Bearable slings an arm around the still confused Amber, telling him not to hold them back. The newly united and incredibly powerful team stands together, an unlikely alliance forged in the harsh training grounds of the North. Eureka declares that with their combined strength, they will conquer the Demon King's treasury. On the day of the joint quest, a bustling market has been set up outside the Demon King's castle, the atmosphere festive and tense. At the castle entrance, the representatives of the 4 guilds assemble on a grand stage before a massive crowd. The Southern Guild's receptionist enthusiastically announces the start of the 4-guild joint quest, the first to be held in 20 years. The receptionists from the East, North, and West guilds take turns explaining the rules. The location is the Demon King's castle. The goal is to obtain the most valuable item from the mysterious treasury within, and the order of entry has been predetermined by the dukes. The 4 great dukes, Madrun, Fogg, Rush, and Noctis, gather around a stone pedestal to perform the dungeon opening ceremony. They each place a ceremonial key into the lock, and the massive, circular stone door to the treasury begins to grind open. The receptionist declares that the forbidden door has opened and the joint quest officially starts now. The dark, cavernous entrance to the legendary dungeon is finally revealed to the world. As per the predetermined order, Dandelion's party from the Southern Guild enters last, putting them at a significant disadvantage. Bearable suggests their first move should be to find and join up with Eureka and the others from the north. Dandelion, however, once again enters his focused combat state, his eyes glazing over as he mutters, "Target. Defeat." Before anyone can react, he strikes Bearable from behind, knocking his new ally unconscious with a single, decisive blow. Amber shouts in shock and confusion at Dandelion's sudden and inexplicable betrayal. A new adventurer, a young woman with a lollipop, appears from the shadows and casually declares Bearable disqualified from the quest. She licks her lollipop with a smug, self-satisfied expression. Zenobia rushes to Dandelion's side, while Amber is stunned that he couldn't even react to the speed of the unknown attacker who took down an S-rank adventurer. The girl introduces herself as Barbara Aiken, Lord Noctis's exclusive adventurer from the Eastern Guild. Bearable, now conscious, asks what she did, and she explains that she was waiting for this chance to test them, as the winning guild will become the country's official representative. She adds that it would be far too embarrassing if a barbarian, who can't even use magic, were to win the honor. She shouts, "Shoot!" and unleashes a powerful magical attack from a wand-like device. The blast sends Zenobia flying, and Barbara declares her disqualified as well. Amber manages to erect a defensive barrier just in time, blocking a follow-up attack aimed at him. Barbara is impressed that he could block her attack but comments that his magic seems dangerously unstable, while calling the man he is protecting impressive. She prepares another spell, a glowing circle forming around her as she takes aim. Amber is shocked, realizing she hasn't even begun to cast her magic yet, the power flowing from her effortlessly. A massive beam of light erupts from her lollipop, which is revealed to be a powerful magical artifact. Amber recognizes the item she is using and asks if she has one too. She reveals a dark, magical cloak, identical to the one Zenobia possesses. She teases him, asking if he also has one but can't quite use it properly, confirming that it's not an item one can obtain by mere chance. Zenobia, now wearing her own identical cloak, demands to know where Barbara got such a rare and powerful item. Barbara is surprised to see that the young lady from the Southern Guild has won as well. Bearable, watching from the sidelines, yells out Zenovia's name in concern. A brilliant light envelopes Zenovia as she taps into the full power of the cloak. Her eyes glow with a fierce, demonic energy as she glares at Barbara and tells her not to get cocky. She declares that such childish tricks will not work on her. Barbara is stunned by the immense amount of magic power Zenovia is now wielding, a level far higher than her own. She decides to abandon the treasure hunt, declaring that the ultimate gift for Lord Noctis, Zenovia herself, is right here for the taking. She unleashes another attack with a different magical artifact, shouting that she has found her prize. The attack engulfs Zenovia's silhouette in a blinding flash of light. The powerful blast hits its mark with a massive explosion. Zenovia is thrown backward by the force of the attack, landing hard on the dungeon floor. Barbara mockingly calls her a lively guinea pig, saying she is nothing more than a bug, not a gift fit for her lord. Amber realizes the situation is dire, as a full-on confrontation has broken out far sooner than he anticipated. He quickly considers his options, wondering if they should try to join up with the Northern team and what the Western Guild will do in the ensuing chaos. Dandelion suddenly snaps out of his battle trance, looking around in confusion and exclaiming that this is the Demon King's treasure hall. He clutches his head in panic, realizing with horror that he has broken his promise to the Demon King by entering this forbidden place.